The Lysander building was almost deserted at this hour, but the 42nd floor was still brightly lit like a stubborn front line. All day, CEO Elena Voss had been caught up in a multitude of meetings, and now she was stuck in the most crucial one, the hundreds of millions of dollars restructuring plan. This was the final step for the company to escape the crisis. If signed, the plan would be executed immediately. Any delay, and the competition would surpass them in a matter of weeks. In the meeting room, Conrad Hale, the vice president, stood right next to the screen, pointing at figures and urging her to sign quickly. Marcus Wynn, the chief of security, checked the security protocol on his tablet, and Nora Hill, the legal counsel, reviewed every clause with near unblinking speed. Elena leaned back in her chair for a few seconds, then bent over the documents again. She was exhausted, her shoulders heavy as stone, but her eyes held the alertness of someone who couldn't afford to make another mistake. This plan determined the company's future and her own. While they were tense on the 42nd floor, Kalen Ward was on the 12th floor, crouching next to a large electrical cabinet. He was the night shift technician, the kind of person few people noticed during the day. But the night was different. Night was when the building relied on him to keep everything running that others assumed was automatic. Kalen habitually checked each circuit breaker. Everything initially seemed normal, but when he reached the main cable bundle leading to the upper floors, he paused. Amidst the familiar hum of the current, there was a sudden, sharp, and quick electrical impulse sound, like an auxiliary circuit activating at the wrong time. He put his ear closer. The sound followed the cable line, heading straight up to the 42nd floor. "That's odd," Kalen muttered. He opened the technical box lid. The inside was dark, but it didn't prevent him from noticing a difference. In the upper corner was a device that didn't belong to the building system. It lacked an inspection stamp, was not the standard color for Lysander equipment or any supplier. It was a small circuit board plugged into the cable line, connected to a proximity sensor mounted on the wall. Its indicator light was blinking blue, not the safety color the system used, but a very clear cyclical on and off signal, as if waiting for a command. Kalen squinted. Who installed this here? He gently touched the connection cable. Heat radiated from the circuit board. The device was active. Not only that, it was transmitting high-intensity data. Kalen pulled a handheld tester from his jacket pocket. He scanned the frequency. The small screen flickered rapidly before displaying a line that made his heart pound. Direct connection to CEO conference room, 42nd floor. Kalen instantly stood up. No way! Who would install something like this here? He checked the device again, this time looking at the signal pattern. The results sent a chill down his spine. The circuit board was capable of activating some kind of tool when the sensor detected the exact position or specific activity of someone in the conference room. It wasn't surveillance equipment. It looked like a trigger. Kalen pressed the radio button. Engineering to security, I need assistance checking this. He heard only static, and then the signal vanished. He tried again. More static. The radio was heavily jammed as if someone was deliberately blocking the signal. Kalen bit his lip, his hand trembling slightly. This was no longer a normal technical malfunction. This device was deliberately installed, wired directly to the conference room with the most important person in the company, and it was running right as the meeting took place. He couldn't alert anyone. He didn't know the specifics, but a delay of just a few minutes, the consequences could be irreversible. Kalen looked at the emergency stairwell at the end of the hallway. He decided not to hesitate any longer. No time left.
Kalen slammed the technical cabinet shut, gripping the multi-tool and testing device in his hand, and bolted toward the stairs. His heart pounding, signaling that he had just stepped into something a normal technician would never dare to interfere with. He ran up the steps, 3 floors, then 5, his breath growing ragged, but only one thought was in his head. He had to get to the 42nd floor before something happened to Elena Voss.
As he reached the 30th floor, Kalen heard another electrical impulse travel along the cable line. This time, the sound was sharper, as if the device was switching modes. His eyes widened. It was about to activate. He ran faster, ignoring the pain in his legs or the chaotic rhythm of his heart. With 2 floors left to go, he thought to himself, "If I'm late, someone will die." Kalen burst out of the stairwell, pushing the door so hard it hit the wall. The hallway of the 42nd floor stretched before him. The meeting was still taking place at the end of the corridor. There was no intervention, no warning. No one knew something was waiting for the exact moment to strike. Kalen tightened his grip on the toolbox, took a deep breath, and sprinted toward the conference room as if it were the last chance to prevent the worst from happening. The conference room on the 42nd floor was so quiet you could hear the rustle of paper. Elena had reviewed the plan nearly 10 times, and now only one signature remained. Her pen nib touched the paper, the ink about to flow into the signature box. Conrad stood right next to her, practically leaning forward with anticipation. "Sign it, Elena. We don't have time to hesitate." Bang! The conference room door burst open as if kicked straight in. The sound echoed throughout the large room. All 4 people spun around. Kalen Ward appeared in the doorway, breathless, his uniform shirt wrinkled from the run. Sweat dripped from his temples. He looked like he had just escaped an explosion. "What is this?" Marcus jumped up. Conrad immediately rushed over, pointing a finger at Kalen's face. "Are you insane? Who let you in here? Get out now!" Kalen looked at no one but Elena. His voice clearly held a restrained mix of fear and urgency. "Don't sign. Get out of your chair now." Elena frowned, not understanding. The entire room froze for a few seconds. Conrad stepped up, trying to grab Kalen. "You're fired. Security!"
But Kalen didn't wait for their reaction. He dashed straight to the light control panel on the wall. A forceful and decisive movement, he yanked the main switch. Pff! The entire room plunged into darkness, leaving only the red emergency lights flashing intermittently like a heartbeat monitor. And precisely at that moment, beep, click, a thin beam of light, like a strand of hair, shot from the corner of the ceiling, aimed directly at the spot Elena had been in less than 3 seconds ago. Zzzz! The laser cut a black, scorched line across the tabletop, and thin smoke rose. The smell of burning wood spread through the air. Elena was stunned. Nara huddled down. Marcus instinctively rushed to pull Conrad back for self-protection. Kalen shouted, "Get down!" He lunged at Elena, pulling her to the floor toward him just before the second laser beam fired. Elena hadn't even grasped what was happening, her head pressed against the cold floor. A second click sounded. The laser beam swept across the space, grazing her chair, burning a singed line right across the cushion. Elena felt the heat just a few centimeters from the back of her neck. The warning sound from the device on the ceiling blared continuously, as if trying to reacquire the target. Kalen looked up, knowing it was preparing to fire again. Without time to think, he pulled Elena to roll sideways, dodging while trying to locate the control box. Marcus yelled, "Kalen, where is the device?" Kalen replied immediately, short and firm. "Left corner of the wall." He sprang up, running straight to the wall electrical box. The air still held the smell of the recently fired laser. Kalen pulled the insulated pliers he always carried during the night shift from his pocket.
His hands trembled from adrenaline, but his actions were precise, like professional reflexes. The sealing device made faster clicking sounds, a sign it was preparing to fire the third shot. Kalen opened the electrical box cover, seeing an unusual additional line connected to the power supply. There was no time to unscrew individual bolts. He inserted the pliers between the wire cluster and cleanly cut the hot lead connected to the sensor. Snap! A small spark flew out. Then, the entire room fell into silence. The laser turned off completely. The ceiling sensor light shifted from red to gray, like a machine that had just been unplugged. Marcus rushed over to check. Nora was still in shock, unable to stand up. Conrad leaned against the table, his face tight. No one could tell if it was from fear or anger. Elena supported herself and sat up. Her breathing was still ragged after Kalen's dive. She looked at the scorched mark on the tabletop, exactly where her hand would have been to sign moments earlier. If she had signed at that exact moment, the laser would have struck her chest. Kalen stood a few steps away from her, still holding the warm pliers. His breath was heavy, his shirt stained with sweat, but his eyes were clear. He clearly knew exactly what he was doing. No one spoke a word for a few seconds. They all looked at Kalen. Conrad was the first to break the silence. Do you know what you just did? Elena raised a hand to stop him.
She stood up, walking slowly toward Kalen. No shouting, no anger, just looking at him as if trying to read a deep-seated answer. Kalen took a breath. I told you not to sign. There was a device attached to the system. It targeted your exact position. Elena looked straight at him. Her eyes no longer held the doubt she had when he burst in, no longer the annoyance of being interrupted. The distance between CEO and technician was gone. Her gaze shifted to something else. Trust, and the fear of having just escaped something she had never imagined that night. She spoke softly, but clearly enough for the whole room to hear. You just saved my life. Kalen remained silent, not boasting. He simply said, We're not safe yet. That device didn't appear by itself. Someone installed it. Elena exhaled deeply, then nodded as if accepting a truth she hadn't expected to face that night. Marcus activated the emergency protocol, locking all doors on the 42nd floor. Anti-intrusion panels slid down, sealing off the hallway. Red lights swept across everyone's faces, creating the sense that the entire building was holding its breath. No one leaves this room until I have checked the entire system, Marcus curtly ordered. Security to inspect every power outlet and sealing device. Kalen knelt beside the electrical box he had just cut power to, reached into his jacket pocket, and pulled out the component fragment he had picked up earlier from the technical floor. He placed it on the table, sliding it toward Elena and Nora. This thing is not part of the Lysander system. Someone wired it into the cable line leading directly up here. Conrad crossed his arms, his voice strained. Are you trying to accuse someone here, a technician, who dares to... Kalen interrupted, his voice firm.
This device doesn't just transmit signals. It scans position based on hand movement. When Ms. Elena put her pen into the signing area, the sensor would pinpoint the coordinates. That was the moment it was preparing to activate. Elena lightly clenched her fingers, her heart tightening as she pictured herself leaning down to sign just minutes ago. Marcus looked at her. Do you want to check the access logs for the 35th floor? Elena nodded. Do it now. Marcus opened his tablet, accessing the entry management system. He filtered the data by time. Just seconds later, the log table appeared. Marcus frowned, then turned the screen toward Elena. Most recent access, 2041. User, C.H. Hale. Elena looked at Conrad. Nora looked at Conrad. The room froze solid. Conrad stood still for half a second before giving a stiff laugh. I went down to check the lighting equipment. The system down there is often faulty. Are you going to convict me just because of a log entry? Kalen said nothing more. He rotated the screen of the testing device he had brought from the lower floor. On it was a photograph he had managed to save inside the technical box. Connection history of the circuit board. Signal transmission path to conference room. System login name, C.H. Hale. Nora took the device from Kalen's hand, examining it closely. Her face was pale. Kalen cannot fake this kind of log. This is a direct technical system signal.
Conrad took a step back. No, I didn't install it. Someone used my name. Marcus stepped closer, his eyes sharp as a knife. Why does it match down to the minute, Conrad? And why was the access device located precisely in the cabinet on the 35th floor? The floor you were responsible for this week. Conrad stammered, his voice breaking like a string. I don't know anything. I just... Beep! A sharp alarm cut through the conversation. Everyone looked up simultaneously. The ceiling sensor light shifted from gray to a brilliant red. Nora screamed, "It's not completely shut down!" Kalen saw the sensor's calibration beam locking onto a target. He only managed to shout one thing, "Get down!" Elena and Nora immediately ducked under the table. Marcus pulled Conrad to the side. Zzzzt! The laser beam swept across the air, firing straight into the backrest behind Elena's chair, shattering the leather upholstery. A thin plume of smoke rose, the burnt smell stronger than before. Elena gripped the edge of the table, her heart racing chaotically. If she had been standing, that beam would have gone right through her neck. Kalen didn't stop. He dashed straight to the connection box, still holding the insulated pliers. He opened the wall cover, seeing the backup line automatically activating through an auxiliary bridge. "They're using a secondary power source!" he yelled. Marcus roared, "Cut it off!" Kalen gritted his teeth, placed the pliers on the auxiliary wire, and squeezed hard. Snap! A small spark popped. Then, the entire system on the ceiling cut off, as if taking its last breath. The room fell into a tense silence. Only the heavy breathing of the four people remained, and Conrad's stammering attempt to conceal his fear. "Kalen," Elena said, her voice still slightly shaky. "This device, if it activated itself a second time, does that mean someone is controlling it remotely?" Kalen stood up straight, his eyes still fixed on the ceiling. "Not remotely. It was programmed to run on a cycle, and the programmer knew exactly your meeting time." No one spoke for a few seconds. The truth slammed down faster than they could breathe. This was not an accident, not a technical glitch. This was a genuine conspiracy, and someone inside the company wanted Elena gone. Before the conference room door could be fully closed, Conrad suddenly stood up, backing toward the door like someone who had just seen a death sentence. Sweat poured from his temples. Elena had just turned to Marcus to ask further when Conrad abruptly spun around and bolted out into the hallway. "Stop right there!" Marcus yelled, but Conrad was running as if trying to escape a nightmare. Two security guards immediately chased after him. Marcus also sprinted out, his shoes pounding on the floor, creating a frantic rhythm. Elena only caught a fleeting glimpse of Conrad disappearing around the corner before the anti-intrusion door fully slid shut. Kalen rushed to the hallway control panel. "Give me access. I'll unlock the 42nd floor, but only the elevator area." Elena instantly nodded. "Do it." Kalen typed the emergency code sequence. The security door opened slightly. Marcus and two guards rushed through. Conrad raced to the elevator, frantically pressing the buttons. As the elevator doors slid open, He tried to squeeze in, but Marcus grabbed the collar of his shirt from behind, pulling him back. Conrad fell to the floor, bracing himself, trying to get up. The two guards rushed in and held him tight. "Don't touch me! I didn't do anything!" Conrad screamed, but his voice lacked any confidence. Marcus leaned down. "We'll find out what you did right now." Elena walked over as they escorted Conrad back to the conference room. He avoided her gaze, but she looked straight at him without blinking. "Search his office," Elena said, her voice so cold it stunned Conrad for a few seconds. Marcus nodded, giving orders to the security team. Just 10 minutes later, they crowded into Conrad's office on the 40th floor. The door opened with his fingerprint. Kalen followed at the end, still holding the testing device. The office lights were on. The desk drawers were locked. Marcus picked the lock in seconds. They turned over every drawer: papers, documents, hard drives, and a small metal box. Nora opened the box, her eyes widening. "Oh my God!" Inside was a USB drive labeled Scenario E42. Nora plugged it into a secure laptop. The screen displayed a simulation, an electronic accident occurring in the conference room, the position sensor malfunctioning, leading to a misfired laser beam. Right beneath it was a document titled Contingency Share Allocation Following the Unexpected Incident of the CEO. Conrad's name topped the list. Elena looked at the pages, clenching her fist. "You were planning to replace me." Marcus pulled out another folder of printed correspondence. Nora flipped through the pages, then looked up. Emails exchanged with Auden Capital Fund, the fund that tried to take over Lysander last year. Conrad was silent. There were no more excuses.
While Marcus secured the documents, Kalen walked over to Conrad's computer. He didn't sit in the chair, but stood right next to it, turning on the screen with the password provided by security. He checked the internal network connection history. His purpose wasn't to check emails, it was to trace the code that activated the laser. In just a few minutes, he found a strange file in the system directory. A scheduled activation code set by time, exactly the time of tonight's meeting. Kalen opened the file creation log. The text was clearly visible. Source: Conrad Hale's laptop. But the sending time didn't match. Kalen frowned. Wait a minute. Conrad wasn't in his office at this time. Marcus turned. What do you mean? Kalen turned the screen for everyone to see. This is the access log from Conrad's laptop, but this timestamp falls between two meetings he attended on the 38th floor. He couldn't have done it himself. Elena tightened her grip on the share allocation paper. Someone used his machine to send the code? Kalen nodded. Exactly. Besides him, one other person was involved. Nora frowned. Someone inside with full access privileges? Kalen continued checking the log chain. A strange internal IP address automatically linked to Conrad's laptop minutes before the code was injected into the system. Here, Kalen pointed to the screen. A device with high-level access privileges. Not security, not engineering, this is management-level access. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, suffocating.
Elena looked at Conrad. "You didn't act alone. I know that." Conrad didn't reply, but his eyes wavered. It was the look of someone trying to hide another, more dangerous name. Elena took a deep breath. "I thought this was just a personal attack, but no, this is a planned coup." Nora nodded, her voice soft but sharp. "They didn't just want to eliminate you, they wanted to take over the entire company." Kalen turned off the computer screen, turning back to Elena. "They failed the first strike, but the person behind it hasn't shown their face. They are in this building and they know we just foiled their plan. Elena clenched her hands. The fear had morphed into clarity, and within that clarity was a cold determination. Only Elena and Kaylin remained in the 40th floor conference room after the investigation team took all documents for sealing. The white lights shone down, making both look as if they had just stepped away from a major collision, their adrenaline still running wild. Elena looked at Kaylin for a few seconds, then abruptly asked directly, "Why did you rush into the conference room? You could have reported to your superiors. You could have stayed out of it. You had no obligation to risk yourself like that." Kaylin paused. He knew this question would come sooner or later, but it still took him a beat to answer. "I tried to report it." Kaylin held up his radio. The signal was jammed. "If I had stayed there waiting for a response, you wouldn't be here." Elena crossed her arms, her gaze not cold, but deep and serious. "I want the real reason." Kaylin took a breath, revealing for the first time tonight the exhaustion behind his calm demeanor.
"I used to be a cybersecurity technician," he began. "I worked at a big company. Night shift, day shift, always on call. Then my wife became seriously ill. I had to stay with her almost all the time near the end." He paused, his voice lower. "When my wife passed away, I was left alone with my daughter. I couldn't let her grow up with a father who always came home at midnight. I needed a job that allowed me to be home on time, to read her stories, so she knew she wasn't alone." Elena looked at him, not interrupting. "So I chose basic technical work here," Kaylin continued. "Few people realize I can do more than check pipes, but I don't regret it, as long as I get home on time every evening." Elena nodded lightly. "And that's why you avoided trouble?" Kaylin gave a slight, humorless smile. "I avoided it for 3 years, but tonight, I couldn't. When I heard the impulse sound, when I saw the device, I thought of only one thing. If I ignored it, someone would die right in front of me." He placed a hand on his chest, as if touching the spot where his heart was trying to keep the rhythm. "I still have to be a role model for my daughter. I can't teach her right from wrong if I stand aside when I know someone is being harmed." The room fell silent for a few seconds. Elena said nothing, but her expression softened, more genuine, more human. This was not the look of a CEO evaluating an employee. This was the gaze of a person acknowledging the courage of the man before her. The door opened. Marcus walked in, his face heavy as the night storm. Conrad confessed, but he said he was only taking orders. He is not the mastermind. Elena stood up straight. "Who?" Marcus gave a name that Elena freezed for a second. "Your executive assistant, Adrian Park."
Elena shook her head, almost disbelieving. "Adrian has worked with me for 4 years. He's trustworthy, or so I thought." Kaylin sat down at Conrad's computer, quickly typing into the system. He opened the log file from earlier, cross-referencing it with the internal network access history. In less than 20 seconds, the screen clearly displayed the text, "User who introduced the malicious code A_Park_exec assist." Kaylin pointed to it. He used Conrad's machine as a proxy, activated the code from his device, and then transferred it to Conrad's laptop to cover his tracks. Marcus nodded. "Makes sense. If this operation had succeeded, Conrad would have been the one responsible." "Meaning Adrian was behind everything," Elena said, her voice low but sharp. The internal investigation team was summoned immediately. 10 minutes later, they escorted Adrian from the 28th floor. On him were a personal phone not registered with the company, a bank card from the Auden Capital Investment Fund, and an encrypted email containing the exact laser code sequence. Nora quickly read the emails, then concluded. Auden paid to eliminate Elena. They wanted to put Conrad in as interim CEO, then take over Lysander through the back door. Elena leaned her hand on the table, not out of weakness, but because she was connecting all the pieces. Marcus said, Conrad was the pawn, Adrian was the executor, Auden was behind it. Kalen added, It all matches the device I found on the technical floor. They set it up meticulously, precise down to the minute. Elena was silent for a few seconds. Then she looked up, her eyes no longer panicked like when the laser fired, but much more resolute.
I will make this public. Lysander can no longer be controlled by the shadows. She turned to Kalen, her voice decisive yet warm. Kalen, I want you to head the security review team, right now. No one understands the system like you do, and no one I trust right now more than you. Kalen was surprised, but didn't avoid her gaze. Are you sure? I'm just a... Elena cut him off. You are not just anything. You are the reason I am still standing here. And from the moment you rushed into that conference room, you stopped being an outsider. Kalen was silent for a few seconds. Then he nodded. The entire 42nd floor stayed lit throughout the night. Police, legal investigation teams, and forensic technicians went in and out as if this were the scene of a major crime. And indeed it was. All equipment was seized, including the items attached to the ceiling, under the floor, and in the electrical box. Every wire was disassembled, every log examined. The plot to assassinate Lysander's CEO was now securely in the hands of the law. Conrad was led away in handcuffs, his face white. Adrian, the puppet master, was escorted shortly after. He tried to avoid Elena's eyes, but she didn't flinch. She looked straight, and that look was enough for him to lower his head, knowing the game was over. The next morning, Elena convened an emergency board meeting. The faces entering the room were heavy with fear and full of questions. An assassination attempt inside the company, something no one thought possible. Elena started speaking in a calm but firm voice. We were betrayed from within, but the matter has been resolved. I take responsibility for the shortcomings, and I will personally overhaul the entire system. No one objected. No one wanted to replace the person who had nearly died to keep the company from collapsing. More importantly, no one had the courage to face what remained but her.
A board member spoke up. Elena, we want you to continue leading Lysander. The whole room agreed. No vote was necessary. For the first time in hours, Elena let out a soft breath. The shock hadn't worn off, but their support gave her the anchor to stand firm. Immediately after, she made a major decision. Starting today, Lysander will establish a core security team, and the head of that team is Kalen Ward. Some people exchanged surprised glances. A technician becoming the chief security leader? Elena explained briefly. He saved my life. If it weren't for Kalen, none of us would be here. No one raised any further objections.
When Elena announced the decision, Kalen stood still for a few seconds before saying, I truly don't think I'm suitable. I have a daughter. I need time for her. Elena immediately understood his hesitation. Then I will create the conditions. Flexible working hours, prioritizing family time, and a long-term scholarship for your daughter, to give her a better path, whatever she chooses later. Kalen looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. This wasn't a recruitment pitch, but a thank you. It was trust. He bowed his head, making his decision. I accept.
I will do my best to ensure Lysander is never attacked from within again. 1 week later. The Lysander building returned to normal operations, although everyone noticed the change in atmosphere. Safer, more vigilant, and with a degree of respect for the newly appointed man. Kalen brought his young daughter, Mira, into the building. The little girl hugged a toy robot, her eyes wide with endless curiosity as she looked at everything. "What do you do here, Dad?" Mira asked, her voice chirping.
Kalen held his daughter's hand and smiled gently. "I help keep everyone safe." Mira nodded, as if that were the most important job in the world. In the distance, Elena leaned against the glass railing of the 10th floor corridor, watching the father and daughter walk away. A warmth crept into the corner of her eyes. If not for Kalen, Lysander might now be in the hands of others, and she might not even exist. In the evening, as the building lights dimmed, Elena walked alone into the 42nd floor conference room, where it all began. The chair where she had sat was now replaced. The laser burn mark had been cleaned, but the memory of that night did not vanish. She lightly touched the tabletop, silently saying, "If you hadn't walked in that night, I wouldn't be here." The door opened softly. Kalen stood there, having just completed his first shift as the head of security. He looked at Elena, and she looked at him. The distance between CEO and employee was gone. They were just two people who had just been through an underground battle and survived. Elena walked closer to the glass window. Below, the city stretched out like an endless map of lights. Kalen stepped up beside her. They didn't speak, but both understood. Their lives had taken a different turn from the moment he rushed into that conference room. A reckless act, a split-second decision, a second's difference between life and death, and that very moment had opened a new future for both of them and for all of Lysander.